How's it going, everyone? The PlayStation Store is running its excellent big game, big deal sale. I really do believe the sale is excellent. There's a lot of good stuff discounted. As a part of this sale, gonna be highlighting some of the deals under $5. And again, there's a lot of good stuff, so let's just get right into it, and let's kick things off with Darksiders Warmastered Edition. $3.99 on this. Wanted to mention this because Darksiders 2 is going to have some added interest in a little bit, given that there is going to be an upgrade to PlayStation 5 that is coming out. It's a free upgrade as well, looks quite good. And Darksiders 1 is a game that I really enjoyed back in 2010. I talk about it a lot when I mention this game is on sale, but the dialogue attached to this game when it came out, and I remember this vividly around January of 2010, is that a lot of people said that it was like Legend of Zelda crossed with God of War, and I definitely understand that comparison. The issue is Legend of Zelda and God of War are two of the most iconic franchises of all time, two of the best received franchises of all time. You shouldn't paint Darksiders with that level of expectation. Is it a well-done action game? Absolutely. It's actually well done. You've got some puzzles in there, you've got some nuanced gameplay, and narratively, it's pretty interesting, but just go into it expecting a mid-level action game, and you'll probably be pleasantly surprised. It builds upon it with Darksiders 2 as well, and you should play that, but, you know, wait for the PS5 upgrade at this point. But $3.99 for Darksiders Warmastered Edition, I think that's a great price and definitely would give it a look. Next up, we got Mirror's Edge Catalyst, 75% off for $4.99. I think at this point, we can say that Mirror's Edge Catalyst is actually a fairly underrated game. Look, you're talking to somebody that played Mirror's Edge back when it came out in 2008, and I loved the game back then. Catalyst had a lot of hype, it had a lot of anticipation because it's a game that I don't think the majority of people actually thought would happen because Mirror's Edge was this cult classic, but when Mirror's Edge Catalyst did come out, there was some pushback in terms of the level design. However, if you go back into the game, I feel like there's a lot to enjoy. The parkour gameplay is once again very well done. I think the visuals are absolutely stunning. Even for a game that we're 8 years removed from the release, I think this is a worthwhile one to play through. I think EA should definitely do something to preserve Mirror's Edge 08. I believe it's available backwards compatible on Xbox, but on PlayStation, no possible way to play it. I think it would be a great idea to do a remastered release on that. Free way to print money, EA. Take my advice on that one. But Mirror's Edge Catalyst, $4.99, great price on that. Next up, SOMA, 90% off for $2.99. SOMA, in my opinion, is the best game from Frictional Games. Now, I am not the hardest of hardcore horror game fan, so my opinion on that should honestly be taken with a grain of salt. But when I compare it to the Amnesia titles, I really think SOMA is an incredible game, especially from a psychological standpoint in terms of engrossing you into the world. The atmosphere is fantastic, and narratively, I think it's incredibly compelling. Very short game, I mean, that's to be expected with a game like this, but for $2.99, I think it's the perfect price, and I think it's absolutely worth it for this price. But even if you're not that into horror games, give this one a shot. I think it'll pleasantly surprise you. Next up, Mad Max, 75% off for $4.99. Mad Max had the unfortunate fate of being released on September 1st, 2015. That date might not stand out to a lot of you guys. However, that was the same date that one Metal Gear Solid 5 was released, and two big open world games coming out at the same time. How do you think Mad Max was going to do competing against MGS5? It didn't do all too well, and ultimately I don't think the game is ever going to get a sequel. However, I do think the combat in this game is very good. I do think the performance is really good, and the story, I think, actually does pick up by the latter portion of the game. Unfortunately, we're never going to get a sequel to this game, so that's a little bit of a bummer, but as a standalone experience, I do think it's quite good. For $4.99, not a bad pickup. Next up, Burnout Paradise Remastered, 75% off for $4.99. Another game that I played when it came out all the way back in January of 2008. And I loved Burnout Paradise when it initially came out, and I love the remastered version as well. Not like a blowaway remaster by any stretch of the imagination, but as an arcade racer, it's still a damn good time. The only thing is, it's a game from 2008. That means it's damn near 17 years old. That is actually insane to say that Burnout Paradise is approaching 17 years old, but being a 17-year-old game, it does show its age in a lot of areas. The way the game is designed and how you redo events, it's not the best, and how races are structured, not the best. However, in terms of soundtrack, in terms of chaos, in terms of content, Burnout Paradise is one of those games that you can kind of mentally check out and just unwind and have a good time with. The soundtrack is great as well. Just a solid game, all things considered. And, you know, when it comes to licensed music, it's always going to be a little bit subjective how you vibe with the soundtrack. But when you got songs like My Curse by Killswitch Engage, that's going to be right up my alley. So I enjoyed it quite a lot from that standpoint as well. Frostpunk Console Edition, 85% off for $4.49. great game. 11-Bit Studios has done a great job of creating games that really make you feel a certain way and emotionally tug at the heartstrings. I feel like they did a phenomenal job with this War of Mine, and they once again did a phenomenal job with Frostpunk Console Edition. Now, the Console Edition obviously takes the Frostpunk gameplay, brings it to the DualShock controls, or the DualSense controls. It's a PS4 game, so more so the DualShock controls, but you get the idea, and it does it fairly well. These city builders are obviously always going to be ideally played on PC, but if console's your only option, they did a good job with Frostpunk. Frostpunk 2 recently did just come out on PC. Will come out on PlayStation at some point, but probably still a ways away for that. But for now, check out Frostpunk 1, $4.49. Now, this is the base game. You don't get the DLC with this, so keep that in mind. The complete collection isn't on sale right now, so definitely don't be spending full price on that. But base game, $4.49, good price on that. Next up, Rayman Legends, 80% off for $3.99. Excellent platformer. Look, Ubisoft, you guys gotta reform a little bit in terms of, you know, how you structure your business. Maybe delve back into these IPs that have just been collecting so much dust over the last decade. And, you know, put out some new titles. Rayman Legends, I thought, was a tremendous platformer. I thought it was incredibly well done. Great visual style. Gameplay is great. You know, you don't have, prior to Astrobot, I should say, but prior to Astrobot, it's not like we had a marquee platformer franchise on PlayStation. You know, Ratchet was there, but Rayman's a little different. I mean, Astrobot is now going to be that premier platforming franchise on PlayStation, but nevertheless, if you're into platformers, you're going to get it out of Rayman Legends. It's great. $3.99 is a bargain, so definitely check it out. Next up, we got Resident Evil Revelations, 75% off for $4.99. I think Resident Evil Revelations is super underrated. When you talk about Resident Evil these days, it's always the titles starting with Biohazard, Resident Evil 7, and after that. All of those games are getting a lot of attention. However, there were the Resident Evil games prior to that, in the era like after RE5, that still turned out fairly decent, and I thought Resident Evil Revelations was exactly that. Now, it started off as a 3DS exclusive, so technically speaking, you know, it's not blow away, but it's still fairly good, great from an atmosphere standpoint, and it still has that tone of a Resident Evil game, and it does it fairly well. For $5, I think it's a great pickup, and I do believe it's a game that a lot of you guys missed out on, so go back and check it out, especially if you're a newer fan of the franchise. Next up, Just Cause 3, 85% off for $2.99. In terms of an action-filled, mayhem-induced open world, Just Cause 3 is about as good as it gets. Absolute mayhem, absolute just insanity, explosions, insane traversal. I cannot say enough good things about Just Cause 3 when it comes to the actual fun factor in video games. And sometimes in gaming, that's all you need. That's what it needs to be boiled down to. And Just Cause 3 really hit all the points on that. Rico Rodriguez is not going to have this immersive narrative for you to get emotionally compelled by his story arc. No, that's not what Just Cause is supposed to be. Just Cause is supposed to be chaotic. It's supposed to be insanity, and hits all those points incredibly well, and for $2.99, no-brainer there. Next up, Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Storm 2, 75% off for $4.99. When I recommend a Naruto Storm title from a single-player standpoint, Storm 2 is generally the game I go for, and that is because it does a good job of encapsulating the high point of Naruto. In my opinion, starting with Naruto Shippuden up until Naruto's fight with Pain is the absolute pinnacle of the Naruto anime. You're taking the pinnacle of the Naruto anime, you're encapsulating it into a 14-hour campaign, and Storm 2 ends up being really damn good and recreating a lot of those moments really well. $4.99 for the game is great, and yeah, solid single-player campaign, and that's really why you're playing the game. And for most people, you're gonna have to be a Naruto fan to enjoy the game. Like, you're literally dropped in the beginning of Shippuden, and you're gonna understand nothing if you're just a newcomer to Naruto and trying to enjoy the game. That's not the ideal way to go, but for fans, $4.99 is a great price. Next up, Indigo Prophecy, 75% off for $3.74. Quantic Dream's early title. Indigo Prophecy, much like a lot of the Quantic Dreams titles, does show its age quite a lot. This is a game that came out, I believe, early on in the PlayStation 2 days, and it absolutely shows its age. Janky camera, you know, visuals aren't blow away by any stretch of the imagination. However, from a narrative standpoint, still compelling, and the design of the game I do think is interesting. If you have a familiarity with Quantic Dream titles and you want something narrative-driven, Indigo Prophecy is still a fun game to go through, or an enjoyable game to go through. If you're okay with something a little bit more dated and you want something narrative-driven, I still think Indigo Prophecy is a worthwhile time to go through, but just keep in mind, it's incredibly dated. And speaking of incredibly dated games, let's round this video out with Shenmue 1 and 2, the collection, 85% off for $4.49. I swear I didn't plan that. Shenmue 1 and 2 are probably the apex of games that are incredibly dated. Shenmue, when it came out, truth be told, I didn't play it when it came out, was never a Dreamcast guy growing up, but it was one of those games that if you look at the dialogue around Shenmue 1, generally speaking, it was incredibly ahead of its time from its visuals, its storytelling and everything like that. However, going back and playing through it, Shenmue is such an iconic game that I recommend people go back and play, but it's absolutely, like, it is dated as all hell, but it's still a compelling and worthwhile game to go through. Unfortunately, it wasn't really realized in finality in terms of Shenmue 3, and it didn't really culminate in the fashion I think a lot of people would have hoped for. And I remember when Shenmue 3 was initially announced, that had a lot of buzz, but, you know, what can you do? Not all things end up great, but Shenmue 1 and 2 I still think is worthwhile to go through. $4.49, not a bad pickup, all things considered. But that'll do it for me. Again, this is really the tip of the iceberg for the under $5 games. There's a ton of stuff. So I might even do another video, we'll see, but links to all of these in the description box below. That's going to do it for me. Sound off with all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.